But let me tell you, it's stressful because when you're burning cash like that every month, you know, and I invited my brother in to work with me, and all of a sudden, Dad, we're all arguing. You're like, guys, this is like, but Todd, you said sales were going to start next week. When are they going to start? You know, so just keeping everyone calm and not freaking out is probably the biggest thing.
And I want a good show, damn it. Ready for a good show?
Doing awesome, yeah. I'm excited to talk to you, Angie. Thank you for having me.
Yes!
I've always been doing big into archery, and my dad said, hey, you guys want to start an archery store?
That's how I always do.
I knew, yes, of course, let's do this together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Ecomm Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ecomm Show. As usual, I am your host, Andrew Maff, and today I am joined by the founder and CEO, Todd Cook of SlumberSource. Todd Cook, the founder and CEO of SlumberSource. You're also the founder and CEO of yourself, right? Doesn't that count?
That's right. Yeah.
It's a good start.
Thanks for having me on.
I know you and I have already been like, all right, we're getting deep into this. And I'm like, wait, we've got to, I need some of this on the air because I hate it when all the good stuff gets talked about right at the gate. So super excited to talk to you. SlumberSource, very cool, very differentiated concept. Your background is crazy because unlike a lot of people we have on the show, you have a fantastic background in what I kind of refer to as just like traditional marketing. You had a ton of retail, and now you've kind of started to pivot into the e-commerce space, and you've taken a lot of what you learned into that large scale retail element and brought it into e-commerce. I don't want to tell your backstory. That's why we brought you. So I'm going to give you the floor. I always like to start these off stereotypically. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into SlumberSource.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. My background since I was a little kid, grew up in and around brick and mortar retail, specifically home furnishings. You know, there were and the full line concept still exists, I guess. There's stores like Rooms to Go and others where you can go and get a lamp, But this thing was sort of, this model was sort of in the 70s, late 70s, was on steroids. So we moved to Dallas in the late 70s. My dad immediately went to work opening these big full line furniture stores in Dallas, you know. And I remember we had like an in-house, the gals that were putting together all the newspaper ads, you know, it was all very old school with the cameras. You know, you'd move the stuff around, you put the icon of the sofa here and then shoot it. And it was just crazy. And you think about, wow, all that time just to put that together. And then fast forward to the era of what I would call specialty retail, which is instead of, you know, kind of looking at a brick and mortar store that sells everything, you know, lamps and everything, and look at it and say, where are most of our turns? Where are the margins? Where is the volume? So far, well, it's typically in the mattress section, which in this case was like 18% of the store. Like, what are we selling all this other stuff? So I think I go to Seattle with my dad, we get a bunch of these stores open, and I think there was roughly 50 stores in the Seattle area, and then Portland about the same number. But the key thing, people always go, well, why would you go and open a bunch of stores? That's crazy. Like, open one. Well, the problem is you want to go in with the mindset of hitting and dominating, as far as gross rating points are concerned, TV, radio, and newspaper. How can we dominate there? And the reason for opening all these stores is you want to be able to amortize that spend across those stores on day one, literally. You know, you can't say, well, let's open one store and we'll see how it goes. So he did those stores in Seattle, Portland, those got sold. And I was like, well, hey, I want to try to do it here in Texas. So took a few years to figure out how to make this work in Texas. Could we make it work here? Just because it worked there, it may not work here. And you have to look and say, well, you know, what are the kind of the key markers? Well, the competitors here in Dallas were low hanging fruit. So you have that, you know, but the key thing is, can you come in and spend at the level? And I'm trying to remember, I know back in Napkin when we did the numbers, it was ugly. So to come in and say, what do we have to do to rattle the bell, to make tons of noise, and to dominate in Dallas-Fort Worth, which I think is the number 4 right now DMA in the US.
Yeah.
I
believe that.
So, I think we were right out of the gate, which is crazy. Most people don't have the stomach for this. Right out of the gate, I think we're spending $350,000, $400,000 a month. And keep in mind that, what do they say in Shark Tank? We're pre-revenue. I always love that. They always go, we're pre-revenue. So, you're forecasting that you're going to see the mailman come in your stores. I think on day 1, we opened 20 in Dallas, to give you some idea, specialty. You're going to see the mailman for the next, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months. And meanwhile, you were just burning cash like crazy. But at some point, without anyone freaking out, eventually you got to keep everybody calm. Those two things will intersect and you'll start to get that share of mind, but obviously it's like, when's that coming? When's it going to happen? So, but that was really fun, spending time building out those TV buys, building out those radio buys, spending time, putting together newspaper ads, running these double trucks and trying to figure it out, opening and arguing with the Dallas Morning News on Monday, like, hey, we paid for A2 and A3. What are you guys doing putting us on A6? So there was always this Monday morning quarterback arguing with all the stations and for placement, all that kind of stuff. But that was fun.
That is crazy. Like, you never hear anyone, I mean, in my eyes, that's like, you're almost going from A to Z, right? Like, you're not, you get a lot of people like, I'm going to launch a store, then if it goes well, I'll launch another store, and then we'll kind of scale it from there. Then maybe I franchise. You said, nah, we're going to open up like 20 stores like right away, and then we're just going to own TV and radio in this area and just blow it out of the water. And to your point, that's a huge risk, but obviously it worked out. Yeah. So then what happens, right? Because now you've started to kind of go. Do you still have all those stores, or are you?
No, so those got sold in 2014. Almost all of those stores collectively. There was a big chain on the East Coast called Sleepy's. I think they had 700 stores. Then on the West Coast, those all combined into different. Those rolled up into other retailers. Anyway, long story short. Mattress from out of Houston basically owns all those guys now. But I think they have 300 stores now. So they went through and just bought everybody. This is years and years ago. I do believe, just because, you always hear this, at least when it was like, well, hey, I think we do the same thing in Dallas. No, that was a Halley's Comet. That will never work. Nope. And it really took going to the vendors and showing them, whatever Simmons, you're at X% penetration in Dallas-Fort Worth. We will guarantee to take you from 6 to 15 or whatever it is. So you're putting these deals together with these vendors to get their buy-in. Yeah. And otherwise, you would never have the enormous ad budget. But you got a lot of people in your report that are expecting, hey, sales are eventually going to, what we do call maybe drag the anchor. You just got to drag the anchor. So we're going to drag the anchor, and then eventually it hits. But let me tell you, it's stressful, because when you're burning cash like that every month, and I invited my brother in to work with me, and all of a sudden, Dad, we're all arguing. You're like, guys, this is like, but Todd, you said sales were going to start next week. When are they going to start? So just keeping everyone calm and not freaking out is probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not, at least the website as it now, it's not like just traditional mattresses. It's not, like a mattress firm. You're actually in more of a specialty area.
Yeah.
Correct?
So this is totally different. Like, not even in the same galaxy what we're doing now. When you have guys online. So the online space, once they figured out how to roll pack mattresses, it's been many, many years, probably 15 years ago. You had these direct to consumer guys like Casper, Purple, all these guys, right? So that was really amazing, because they could FedEx to your door, all this great stuff. What really ended up killing a lot of those guys, the roll pack guys. I mean, now you can go anywhere. You can go to Costco, get a roll pack mattress, and walk out the door, $500 king mattress. What killed those guys, specifically Casper, is that, they would have these 90-day, hey, 100-day or 6-month. If you're not happy, call us. No question. And of course, everybody and their brother, they would call, if it was 90 days, they'd call on day 87 and be like, yeah, I'm not sleeping too good. No problem. We're refunding your card now. And then the Casper folks would look and be like, oh gosh, ma'am, So go ahead and keep your mattress. We're not going to be able to pick it up. And that became a major problem. Somewhere in the order of 30 or 40% of their volume was just going right down the trash. People were getting refunds. And ultimately, I think Casper got sold for like pennies on the dollar. I forget when.
Yeah.
This is totally different. So this is home care beds, which at the time, what we were trying to figure out, it was for a family member. We needed like a home care bed. What's a home care bed or a hospital bed? What is that even? Well, it's like basically a hospital bed, but doesn't typically look like a hospital bed that you could have in your home. But under the hood, it's got all these crazy functions and features, the up and down and cardiac functions and everything you would have like in a hospital. Super heavy. I mean, extremely heavy. 800 pounds on a pallet. Pre-sophisticated. You're running, instead of a typical adjustable bed might have two motors, actually a head motor and a foot motor. These will have 4 or 5 or 6 actuators, right? But the bigger thing, what we noticed when we were trying to get a bed for a family member years ago, is like called one of the bigger stores and said, "Hey, we just need to get this bed delivered, installed, set up, whatever." They're like, whoa. We don't work with dates. We don't work with times. We don't. And anyone, I'm sure even you would agree that when you're in home care or anything around health related, high degree of urgency, mom's getting out of the hospital on the 15th. Can you deliver on the 16th?
Yeah.
Yes. This was like a foreign concept to these guys. So to me, that was the end. If we can figure out how to deliver the equivalent of a custom piano from wherever the factory is, because we go straight from the factory. Let's say you're in New York or Brooklyn or wherever the factory is, and we're going to San Diego. How do you do that in 4 or 5 business days? Delivered, set up, installed. So quickly went to work building out a platform to manage these guys. Because to me, that was the key. Maybe most people would look at it and say, we got to hire 50 salespeople and we got to add 1,800 more SKUs on the site. And we're sitting there going, no, we're going to stay in this lane of incredibly hard to deliver products, which are these home care hospital beds, which are really insane. If you saw them on the pallet, I mean, it would look like you're getting a Volkswagen delivered, right?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, customers are still, they're not going to be have empathy in terms of like, hey, look, I paid $8,000 for this hospital bed. We need to deliver it on the 15th or whatever. And they can even see on the page, the algorithm will basically show, depending on where they are, anywhere between 3 and 6 business days, but that's delivered, installed, set up. And these are our guys, which is totally unique. So typically when a bed like this would land, maybe with a competitor, they don't really have guys in the field, or they'll make the mistake and go out and find these like turnkey white glove companies. You may have read about some of these. None of those work, because what I'm sure we don't do that. I think we stuck our fork in the light socket on that a couple times and got burned. We do pianos, we can everything. Oh, this is great. This is awesome. I can just sit back. We don't have to worry about anything. And of course, until it's like the customer calls, Todd, you got a minute? Yeah, what's going on? You said these 2 guys were the best install technicians in all of Las Vegas. Yeah, they're pretty good. Why? Well, clearly not, because he's in the family room with my husband with the manual spread out saying, hopefully we can figure this out. So, you sort of stumble on these things and you realize, okay. You got to bring it all in-house. So all of these processes, customers, obviously, many customers will call with questions, because when you're getting ready to spend, on average, our average ticket's probably closer to $8,000. Yeah. But it's not uncommon to have an order that's like 30, But either way, unless you don't have maybe a soul or something, if you're selling a bed that's $10,000, if you're not running a little bit paranoid and concerned and worried about what could happen, then maybe you shouldn't be doing this. I know a lot of guys say, the reason I started an e-commerce site, so I didn't have to deal with customers. But we flipped that on its head. The minute you order, you're getting calls from us just to kind of pregame. Hey, thanks for your order. So you live in the Boston area. Just want to make sure. So your 2-story. Okay, great. Okay. As soon as it leaves the factory, we'll be calling. So we are literally calling 2-3 times a day. The day of the delivery, it's like customers on the phone with the driver, with the technician, with the everyone's on the phone. Like, we just do not let anything fall through the cracks. That might seem overkill, but it's allowed us to really kind of build this reputation of, hey, these guys are there when they say they're going to be there, which doesn't maybe sound unique in itself, but was the real aha years ago, like going, these stores don't care when this stuff gets delivered, and they're selling hospital beds. How is that possible? And so that was the real, like, epiphany or whatever.
Yeah. And so now, being the e-commerce side, obviously your background being more on the traditional marketing side, when you went e-commerce, what was your approach from a marketing perspective? Like how are you getting this product in front of the right people?
Yeah, right. It's so tricky. And honestly, even if you were to ask me, like, who is the demo, or who, that in itself is tricky, because typical order, let's say from Miami, let's just customer orders in Miami or whatever. There's so many, typically in most orders, you have the adult children. So let's say the parents are in their 80s, they live in Miami. Adult children live in Wichita, Kansas, and they're in their 50s. They're involved, but sometimes it's the caregivers that are starting this whole thing. So you have so many people involved, and sometimes we're the ones that have to come in and say, "Look, guys, let's take a chill pill. Look, I think I would recommend going this way or that way, not this way or that way." But you get a lot of. So who are you appealing to? Well, obviously the adult children. Sometimes it's the end user who's, not necessarily, it's not always just assuming they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s. You have people with mobility issues much younger than that need these beds, and there's cool technology in a lot of these things where the newer stuff that's hot and cool now is where the bed rotates, descends to the floor, and you can exit, right? So that's kind of cool. A lot of cool stuff. But again, all of that requires, that your technicians are on their game. These beds are constantly being changed as far as just re-engineered. And so that we're always having to keep them in the loop. But how do you then advertise to these folks? How do you figure out what to do? For us, it's just been kind of hit or miss. I think, obviously we'd love to do other things, but I think we've just sort of been spending a lot of time with our SEO, optimizing. We rank pretty high on everything home care bed related. And of course, kind of have our pedal to the metal on AdWords. That's great. And also, really when it comes to just like, we get a lot of referrals too, just because not only from the factory, but from customers that are like, where they'll call the factory, or they'll call even another store or whatever, or one of their friends will say, and they'll call one of these stores, and the store's like, "Oh, we can't." Like one of these items we sell, Pottery Barn sells the same thing. They can't deliver and install for 2 months. We're doing it in a week anywhere in the U.S. Yeah. So things like that, I think, have become a big part of the driver. And I'm grateful that we get a lot of these referrals, where people, say, "Hey, you guys did a great job for my neighbor or my grandmother or whatever. We'd like to maybe talk to you about getting a similar bed delivered here in the Philadelphia area. Do you guys do?" Yeah, we probably delivered 40 beds there last week, So anyway, I think it's, again, finding something that's different and broken, in this case, very broken. And I think this is probably true of anybody, whether this is like your butcher box guy you had on, or anybody going in there. And I'm sure all these guys, we're no different. We're told that's never going to work. I've got this book back here, the Netflix book. It's kind of cliche, but it's like, where the title of the book is "That Will Never Work." Yeah. And there's a fine line, I think, between kidding yourself, starting a business, and kidding my wife said my tomato sauce is the best, and I'm going to quit my job and go open it. No, don't do it. It's like my accounting teacher used to say, "If it feels good, don't do it. And if things are good, it's only temporary." And I love those. It's kind of negative, honestly. But if you sit there,
great accounting teacher.
Yeah, great accounting teacher. She loved these stories about where she'd go into companies and they'd say, they thought they were profitable. Wait until I get a hold of them. And then she would do this whole thing like, "Here come the feds. You guys just lost money." And she'd underline 6 times. Anyway, so trying to find our path still.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's a challenging space because you have you have that issue where the customer is typically not the consumer. Usually there's someone else doing the searching for it.
That's right.
Then you have the issue of, it's a higher price point product. So certain marketing strategies, you do them, and if they don't work right away, you burn cash pretty quick until you hit like 1 or 2 sales, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, this actually does work. It's just it's much larger ebbs and flows of price points. Like we work with we work with several different brands that have certain products that are 8 figures, right? Sorry, that 8 figures, 5 figures. So like 10K plus, right? And so the issue you run into is once you do get a sale, all of a sudden, depending on what you're spending, you get 2 or 3 sales that week. The numbers look fantastic, and you have a slow week, and all of a sudden it's like, why are we burning so much cash? So it's those giant ebbs and flows are an issue. But to your point, that solution that you've solved on the operational side is what's really allowed those consistent referrals to come in. Because to your point, if I'm trying to put myself in the customer's shoes, if I was purchasing this like for a parent or something like that, I wouldn't trust a company that specializes in these things like yours versus, like, to your point, like a Pottery Barn where it's like, what do you got? It's more, it's almost more of a medical device. So why would I go to Pottery Barn?
And that could be a problem. Imagine the Pottery Barn, nothing against them, imagine they're used to delivering sofas or whatever those guys sell these days, And so they're like, oh, stop 16. Oh, what is this? A hospital? Oh, have you ever done? No, Mike, we'll figure it out, and then they're in there. It's not always that simple because a lot of these beds are pretty sophisticated in terms of the rail systems, and you just need the guys need to be even. And one other point I would make is that delivering and installing in these bigger cities, the Phillies, the LAs, the San Diegos, the Orlando, a lot of these guys we have full-time on our dime, like, because we're doing so much volume with them. But I was thinking about this the other day. Our volume is somewhere probably close to 40% of our sales are literally in the middle of nowhere. So that adds a whole other element of how do you deliver 800-pound, VW Beetle on a pallet across the country. And these customers, let me tell you, you're looking at the map saying, hey, they're in the middle of nowhere, but they're not looking at the map thinking they're in the middle. They're just like, look, I paid for delivery and setup. I don't know, guys, if you have to fly it in here on a helicopter. So we've been able to really grow our middle of nowhere strength, if you will, just our ability to kind of go anywhere, which is kind of cool. So there's that.
Yeah. That's awesome. What's the game plan going forward? Do you think like expansion into new products or into just a different line? Like what's your thought with where you're taking it?
Yeah. I mean, there's always this newer technology coming along with these beds that are really cool. Like these rotating beds seem to be kind of hot now, just more, or it reminds me, I had a call about a month ago and had a customer that bought this for his mother and so forth. And I remember him telling me like, we have 5 caregivers, or something like that. I was like, oh, great. And then he calls me, sometimes I think these people assume that these beds are just like, it's just, you can just fire your caregivers. You don't need anyone. We're just going to put mom in this bed and mom will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye. The caregiver's going to leave. And I'm like, dude, don't fire your caregivers. Mom still needs help.
Yeah.
So I think just continuing to hone in on the categories or these category killer models that continue to be popular. And but I think the demand is obviously continuing to grow for home care beds, and the thing is Medicare doesn't really get involved. This is the thing. So all of this stuff is out of pocket, right? Used to be 100 years ago. You could call and be like, oh, I want to get hospital bed. And a store like ours, evidently, I was never in this business years ago, but you say, oh yeah, we'll process your new hospital bed through Medicare. Nobody does that anymore. I wish it was that way. It'd be great. It'd be better for everyone. So it is out of pocket for these customers. So that adds to sort of the like, hey, I spent 10 grand on a bed. Of course they're going to be a little hyped up, a little nervous. So it's our job to keep everybody calm and calling them constantly, as it's making its way there. And as opposed to them just looking out the levelors. Remember the levelors, those old blinds? Look out the levelors and be like, honey, look, the guys are here. That would never happen with us. Customers know days in advance. We have to plan, do a lot of planning. So it's a major event when we're delivering because it's such this big, and a lot of times the family's out front and they're like, oh my God, this is so great. You know, finally mom will be able to sleep better. So it's like a big thing, you know?
Yeah. Very cool. Todd, this was awesome. I don't want to take up too much more time. I know you're super busy. Amazing story, amazing background, amazing way that you've tackled all of the nuanced issues with the business. I'd love to give you the floor. Let everyone know where they can find out more about you and, of course, more about SlumberSource.
Yeah, just go to direct your browser to SlumberSource.com. And we're only hospital beds, home care beds. We know everything about these beds. And we'll take care of you. Just call us. We'll answer all your questions about what you think you might need, what the caregivers think you might need, what you don't think you need. And, you know, we'll get calls and the family will say, look, the doctor just told us we need to check every single box. So we need a bed that does this, 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 and this. We have that. Or if you just need a bed that does this and this and this, we do that too. So we're here to answer all your questions. It was great talking to you.
Beautiful. Todd, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone who tuned in, thank you, sir. Thank you as well. Please make sure you do the usual thing, rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff on whichever podcast platform you prefer, or head over to the ecommshow.com to check out all of our previous episodes. But as usual, thank you all for joining us. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ecomm Show. Head over to ecommshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The Ecomm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of the Ecomm Show.